Welcome to the Casual Dance Teachers Podcast. This is your host, Maya. Today, I'm so excited to have an inspirational choreographer, dance educator, performing artist, and more joining us on the show, Anabella Lenzu. Before we begin, I will tell you a little bit more about Anabella if you're not already familiar with her career. Anabella Lenzu is originally from Argentina and has over 35 years of experience working in Argentina, Chile, Italy, and the US. Lenzu directs her own company, Anabella Lenzu Dance Drama, which since 2006 has presented 400 performances, created 15 choreographic works, and performed at 100 venues, presenting thought-provoking and historically conscious dance theater in New York City. In 2023, Anabella received the National Award for Outstanding Leadership in the Independent Sector by NDEO, the National Dance Education Organization, and in 2022, the Innovative Dance Educator Award by New York State Dance Education Association, acknowledging her work as a dance educator who develops innovative pedagogy in the dance field. Lenzu has written for various dance and arts magazine and published her first book in 2013, Unveiling Motion and Emotion. She also just published her second book, Teaching Dance Through Meaningful Gestures, which explores how technique is a philosophy and a theory, and how the body is an instrument for expression. I had the great treat of reading Anabella's most recent book, and I'm so happy to have her on the show today to unpack just a few of the little treasures that I unearthed, delve in a little bit more to her thought process and the background behind some of her ideas in the book. So without further ado, let's talk to Anabella Lenzu. Anabella, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you so much for the invitation, Maya.
Yes, I absolutely loved reading your book recently. Thank you so much for sharing that. There's a lot to it that I loved, but one of the things that really struck me is the way that you differentiate dance education and the art of teaching dance as its own technique, its own thing that needs to be examined and taught and studied, just like the art of moving the body and dance technique. So I'm curious to hear kind of what your journey to get to that point was. It sounded like from such a young age you understood that that was its own technique and you were really interested in that. But can you tell us a little bit about your background and how you grew into a dance educator?
Sure. Thank you for the question. Well, I'm originally from Argentina, so I grew up in a small town where, we have our 3 or 4 dance studios. So I started to study flamenco, actually, and then later on I started with ballet. And it was interesting, when you have a tendency to examine your own teachers, even when you are little, why they teach you this? Why they're not teaching you that? Why we imitate movement? I mean, my focus on pedagogy and methodology of teaching, I was always interested since little. But let's say that through the different cultures that I teach, I live in Argentina, then I taught a little bit and touring in Chile. Then I came to United States in 1999 to study at Juilliard School. And then I moved to Italy. And then I also teach in London. And then coming back to stay for good here in New York City in 2006. So it's been 19 years that I'm in the American culture of teaching dance. And so I feel that with each country that I teach, with each student, I need to adapt. Because for me, the word education is synonymous of service. Perhaps because all my family are in the medical field, most of them they are nurses, and I really feel that when I am a dance educator and I in front of a class or different institution, from private to a private studio to a public school to a public or private university, I need to encounter the student where they are in the place, and I need to learn about them personally, and then I can serve them. Because it's not, like you say, it's not about, the information, the training. I was very lucky, even I was in Argentina, that we have a terrific ballet school, Baganova line. That's why in Argentina we have not just good soccer players, but we have, most of the amazing ballet dancers in all the main companies around the world. And so we have a very dedicated teachers that they are very technical. but at the same time, how you transfer this information to someone that you don't know. So for me, it's like, student and teacher are walking in different sidewalks, but we need to encounter in the middle of the street to exchange our point of view, who we are, and why dance is important. Basically, it's our point of view of life. Because when I teach for an amateur versus for a professional, it's the same information that I share. But it's my pedagogical tools, is the different methodologies that I use to arrive to them. So the information is the same. I'm talking about alignment. I'm talking about breath. I'm talking about projection of energy. I'm talking about how they need to turn out, how they're going to do a turn. But how is the difference? So writing this book, teaching and learning dance through meaningful gesture, it was an exercise for me to put all these 35 years of experience in a book. And I'm like, okay, how I'm going to talk about this experience that is so vast, and what are the things that give me the keys to open the doors and understand how to establish this communication.
Yes. It's really interesting to hear that you come from a family of medical practitioners, because it explains to me, or gives a little bit additional insight to me, of your really, really clear articulation of anatomy and how that plays into technique. And you demonstrate that so well in the book. But one thing that I was hoping you wouldn't mind sharing with us on the podcast was your understanding of breath, which I feel is so difficult to convey in a visual sense. The way you wrote about it was really enlightening to me. Would you mind sharing some of your insight about teaching breath to dancers?
Thank you. Well, I challenge myself to teach in different backgrounds. So if some educators are here, listen to the podcast, as many students and type of institution you teach, and many kind of artists, the better teacher you become. I feel that the articulation of the ideas start when I expose myself teaching movement and dance to a non-dancers. I mean, I work for opera singers. I choreograph, but I need to train them. And then the same thing for actors and also for visual artists and musicians. So I arrived to another tribe of artists to teach what I know about the knowledge about the body, which is my field, and how I transmit this information. Working with different type of artists and have a deep dialogue, for example, with musicians, how they play and how they use breath, and make me understand how I need to articulate the fact how a dancer breathes. Because we all breathe. Yes, we need to oxygen our muscles. That's the process. But the kind of breath that we use when you do, for example, musical theater versus ballet versus contemporary dance is different. And allowing also the experimentation, because the whole thing is that, and that's, it's very interesting. I was talking this morning teaching to the students how your body look like a puppet on the stage. You look lifeless. Even when we're working on dance on the camera, for example, many people doesn't want to see themselves in the video. Oh, I don't look like, I say, well, because you don't working on the breath. You don't working on your presence. So the kind of breath would help you is to give life and expression to the body. So how you breathe? Well, there are different techniques. Coming back to my friends that are musicians, I ask them, how you play the piano? I say, where you play the piano from? And these are my friends that play for Juilliard or teach music at Juilliard School. And they say, oh, I play the piano through my breath. And through my breath, I feel the weight of my muscles, the weight of my bones. I feel my center of gravity. And so this is the breath that I play. I mean, the score of my music is the breath. And I say, oh, that's what I do in dance. The fact that I score my breath is the way that I expedite, no sound, but the energy of my body. So when you breathe, it's a technical fact, you are connected with the gravity, you are connected to your center of gravity, and then you can let go and feel the weight and the expenditure of air, also energy. Mm-hmm. So what happened is I feel that in the training of the dancer in the last period, and especially in America, I will say that very specifically because, again, I work in different countries and different places where dance is not synonymous of competition. is synonymous of an artistic adventure. And why is that? Because we are not, in another part of the world, we are not focusing on tricks. We are focusing how we put our body in this state of transparency or availability where ideas, where thought, where emotion can pass through the body to the audience. And in order to do that, in order to make my body available, means also being flexible and be strong and have the right alignment, I have to do it through the breath. And so through the breath control is how I project my energy into the space. If we're talking about an opera singer or an actor, they project their voice. Mm-hmm. Or depend how they play in the instrument, depend of the weight, in case of the pianist, how the sound will be loud or, the volume where it will be and the texture of the sound. So in the fact that we're training dancers to do tricks and to do things that are just visual, we forgot that we are training dancers. Mm-hmm. And breath is one of the elements that make us different. We have a breath score. And that's when you work with different director or different choreographer. It's like working with different poets. You have a different way to expedite this energy in a different phrases of movement. Phrases of movement are not just 8 counts, 16 counts. Is through the breath rhythm. And so I think in the game of teaching dance is like the game of the telephone where I tell someone something on the ear and I say banana and ended up saying strawberry at the end of the game of the telephone because we forgot many basic things. So in my book, I named 30 other books about the training of the body and the training, not just the dancer, also the performer. Because in our journey to get quote unquote specialized, we forgot that we are all performing artists. I mean, I don't make a difference between a musician that play in Carnegie Hall and an actor that work in a movie or for the stage and a dancer. I mean, we are all performance artists and we need to know how to breathe and we need to know our projection of energy. Our specialty is about the control, the muscular control and the nuances of movement. But the other things we share and we forgot in our process of teaching, the things that make us differentiate between dance and gymnastics. Having my studio in Argentina for so long, the mother said, "Oh, what is the difference that my daughter does, gymnastic or dance?" I said, "Well, there are 2 different things. One is a sport and one is an art form." And so I feel especially in the United States and in the teaching, we forgot about the artistic part. And if we forget about the artistic part, we forget about the joy of dancing and finding who we are, how we communicate with the community, because we are creating something that is very superficial and not deep. So you see, everything is related to the breath.
Yeah, I love how you talk about that. It's so beautiful. And in one aspect, I agree with everything you're saying, but I'm going to play devil's advocate a little bit. As a teacher with some more beginner intermediate students, younger students, I don't think that I can grasp right now with what you're saying a really good way that I could incorporate that into our weekly, ballet class and still teach them kind of the syllabus of steps that I want to teach them. So what's your response to that? How do I start?
Well, I feel that, again, in the syllabi, of many different institutions, I work and I teach pedagogy at the university. So the young educators, they're bringing exercises, how to teach, a beginner dancer, whatever is 15 years old, 6 years old, breath and movement. For me, is the encounter with themselves. So they're not like parrots doing shapes, imitating things. We need to make them find, that's why the title of my book, meaningful gestures that come within inside. So instead to teach them the arms, YMCA, I just put an example, I'm going to teach them why they're going to do. So they're going to find the shape that they're doing is coming from an inner necessity. I mean, you're learning the movement not from the outside, going into the outside, it's the reverse, going from the inside to the outside. And that's the artistic practice. If you start to teach, and I have 11 years old daughter. I have a 16 years old son, but he doesn't dance. He does sports, soccer. But my daughter, even he's 11, there are certain things that, from little I start to teach, and she's the living example how she can understand that this is an art form through the breath. So, for example, there are different ways to use the breath in the demi-plie. So if I have a student doing a demi-plie, whatever is in sixth position or parallel or turn out in first position, I need to teach them how to breathe. Well, ballet demi-plie is different than modern dance demi-plie. You're like, what? It's the same step. No. Because when you do modern dance is about gravity. So when you descend, when you bend your knees, when doing demi-plie, you're going to exhale. And when you're going to push away the floor, you're going to exhale. That's modern dance. But ballet is an anti-gravity. So when we bend our knees, when we descend, we inhale. And when we push away the floor, we exhale. Just make them understand and score the breath from the beginning when they're learning the vocabulary. You make them feel and understand, this is chocolate. This is vanilla. And they are already in the education, in the past, they know about the breath and how the breath changed our perception of the body, changed the gravity, but also changed us emotionally. It's very interesting, this, I see my 11 years old daughter, and she go to a ballet school, and then, they're preparing for a performance, and the kids, they say, oh, but you're so expressive. How you do it? Firma say, I don't know. I feel my inside. Oh, but we thought that dance is about doing and executing to perfection the steps. No, it's not about that. It's about the uniqueness of you doing that. Everybody's dancing together, but I don't want to look like anybody else. I don't want to look like a photocopy of anybody else. Unless you're in the Bolshoi and then you're doing Swan Lake and then you need to talk about your anonymity. That's not what we want. We want to encourage the person to accept who they are and to self-knowledge. Because if dance education is not about self-knowledge, what is about? So as a teacher, I need to give them the tool to understand, breathing in and breathing out in demi-plie, two kinds of demi-plie, change the way that I feel. And let's talk about it. And let's talk about the commonality. So you see, it's not a difference from a beginning to a professional. And so when I arrive to the professional level, pre-professional level, we're talking about another kind of craft that is not just 2 + 2 is 4. Because in the artistic field, 2 + 2 perhaps is 77. That idea, that technique serve for the performer. I cannot separate the technique to the performative aspect. If I forgot what I'm doing, it's just going to be an empty base. And so that's why, if you're thinking about, I teach in Italy, and Italian people, culture, love dance in comparison of United States. And I'm like, why? Because the way that they be teaching in Italy is very passionate. It's very different than in United States. And so they take it like another, again, activity or sport. And even though, when you're thinking about training a beginner, you don't know what these people will end up. They could be audience members. They could be famous choreographers, dancers, or another dance teacher. You don't know who you have in front. But the information need to be the same, need to be with quality. And I mean quality because you understand why you're teaching them, why they should find the movement from the inside to the outside and not from the outside to the inside.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because why are we doing it if they don't feel something while they're doing it?
And I feel that everybody loves dance. There's so many kind of dance in the world. From ritual dances, folk dances, social dances, spectacular dances. When someone told me, I don't like dance, I say, well, did you try, I don't know, Bharatanatyam? Did you try hula? Did you try Irish dance? There are so many dances, and I feel that that's also our job as an educators. Provide a full dinner so the people can choose whatever they want. Yeah.
Yeah. I am so glad that you brought up the demi-plie and bar in ballet, because I also wanted to pick your brain about your teaching of bar à terre, which you talk about in the book quite a bit, which I thought is kind of unique. I mean, I know it's utilized especially in the pre-professional and collegiate classrooms, but in sort of your conventional, quote unquote, studio setting. You don't see barater utilized very much, I don't think. So I want to hear a little bit about, did you train in that growing up? What made that click for you as a really useful teaching tool?
Sure. Well, barater, or what here we can call floor bar in United States, there is many different methods around the world. There is a French school, there is a Russian school, there is a Cuban, there are different methodologies. What they do is not also for injury preventions, or when you get injury that you do exercises laying down on the floor, either on your back or on your tummy or on the side. We can do also barater laying down on the floor with our feet against the wall. There are many different ways and many different variations. In Argentina, as I say, I have an amazing teacher, Boasil Tupin, who he was a Russian teacher teaching Vagano, but he also was part of a circus, and he was a contortionist. So imagine all the things that we did with him. But when I remember studying, working in barater, 12 years old, I understood, for example, alignment and gravity much quicker than any other student that didn't do it. Because when you realize there's certain things like, being standing up in one foot, or do demi-plie, let's continue that line, do demi-plie on the floor on your tummy is a different experience than do demi-plie standing up than do demi-plie laying down on your back and turn out in a first position, because the way, even they are the same muscles that work, how gravity affects you, make you understand the different biomechanics of the movement. So experiencing doing the same exercises on the floor is like open you to awareness of how the movement is done and what are the inner processes of your own body. So at 12 years old, start that. When then I start teaching ballet at 15 years old, I continue applying to my students, and I saw the result immediately. Even though I was teaching a regular class Monday through Friday, like 1 hour and a half each day, I always start the week on Mondays with barater, and then just Tuesday with standing up and do it. And the results are super quick in the sense of people understand and they can connect the different muscle use and the consciousness of the body through how the gravity hit them in the different way. So I always say that it's not my favorite class that I teach barater. I mean, I have to teach it because it's my duty as a teacher. I'm like, when they understand that to be able to do a turnout, you don't need to use the gluteus maximum, then you need to use your super 6 rotators. How are they going to access that if the previous teacher, they told them squeeze the butt and tummy in and prevent them to feel all the mechanisms that are within. So in my book, I talk about principles, but I don't do exercises. It's a purpose that I don't want to give a recipe. I tell you about principles. It's like, explain to you how, scientifically how flour, and eggs work together. But I'm not going to give you a recipe, because for me, that will kill the creativity of the dance teacher. Mm-hmm. We need to play with the principles to do our own cake. Because if art is not about creativity, it's about doing the same quote unquote exercises, we are killing the art form of dance. Mm-hmm. So I don't want to give a recipe. Many of my students say, but you can do now a series of videos. And no, that's it. I did the book. Now it's up to you to experiment with these principles.
With that said, you have another book. This is your second book that you just published. And this book itself is filled with additional resources that you give. I love that explanation. It's not like a step-by-step, this is how you teach. It's just delving into the concepts of what makes teaching successful
and exciting.
Whatever it is that
also
you need to teach.
For the teacher. It's excited. When you've been teaching, beginner ballet or beginner jazz or beginner tap for 6+ more years, you're like, oh my God, how I can get new energy. Well, I think it's always come back to the principles. And then it's in your creative process. If you teacher get bored teaching, the student will get bored. So you bring in your own questions, your own intention, your own curiosity into the classroom. And so the process of teaching is alive. It's not dead.
Yeah. Because I think even if your favorite cake in the world is chocolate cake, if you have to eat chocolate cake every single day for 10 years, you're not going to like it anymore.
Exactly. And also as a teacher, your methodologies change.
Yes.
You know, during the pandemic, it was very interesting for me to be able to teach online and teach like barra terre or teaching, choreography, or the theoreticals was easy. But to teach technique, it made me refine my vocabulary, my lexicon, the way that I give images. It was not the ideal because what I missed was touch. And when you touch, sometimes you can talk for half an hour, but you touch a student, you touch, the quadriceps, and they realize, oh my God, I'm numbing my whole leg, like what I call the chorizo leg. I say, how are you going to find your abductors if your leg is like a rock in Central Park? I'm like, how you find this, that is a reality, how your bones are floating inside your muscles. This is a fact. Our muscles there are like balloons, the connection to the air, and the bones are floating inside the muscles. So already giving this imagery that is happen, this is a real happen, is not using the imagination. I mean, you use the imagination to imagine this, but this is the process. If we didn't have bones, muscles, and ligaments, our skeleton will be on the ground. It's not our bones that support us. So the methodology that you use in the vocabulary, the didactic change depends on who's in front of you. Are you teaching online? Are you teaching in person? Are you touching the students or not?
So one of the key takeaways here, I think, is to read your book because there's just not time to debrief on all of it. Outside of that, though, can you also tell listeners ways that they can connect with you and get some additional resources from you?
Sure. I'm in social media and all the platforms as Anabella Lenzu. And inside my website, you can find all the resources. I have 2 books that I published. The first one is a travel log about teaching in different countries. So it's more like a journey as a pedagogue. And this second one is more about how to teach, give you strategies. And then the second part of the book is about the technical aspect of the performer. And the third part, the back of the book, is all the resources. But everything is in social media. So AnabellaLenzu.com.
Awesome. Thank you. And actually, genuinely, I highlighted some quotes from your book to share with my own students because I was like, oh yes, this is so good. Maybe this will make them finally get this thing that I've been trying to teach them for the past, 3 years or whatever. But do you personally have a favorite quote related to dance that you'd like to share with us?
In this period, I think the pandemic hit me in that direction when I say, enjoy it like a dark chocolate melting in your mouth. I think sometimes the process of becoming a dancer is hard, but if you don't enjoy the muscular effort, if you don't enjoy the challenge, why are we doing this? I mean, dancers, we have certain characteristics. We like to work hard, but sometimes working hard, it means working tense and deprive ourselves of joy. So that's why I say enjoy it. Enjoy it like a chocolate melt in your mouth that you have a process to feel. So I'm in that time right now. Maybe because it's winter too.
Well, as we're recording this, it'll come out later, but as we're recording this, it's almost Valentine's Day. So that's a great analogy to think about chocolate and enjoying it and feeling the love.
But, I feel that also when you're in front of a student, again, like the nurse experience that I have, I need to make them understand and quick how to help them. And so many of the imageries, it come from a specific student. Sometimes I use an image for everybody, but sometimes it's about this particular student that, today I was teaching and there was these 2 male dancers in the 24, 26 years old. And, I say, you feel like a Tutankhamun. I say, what is this chest? I'm like, I understand this is about survival, but you don't need to survive in a dance class. Actually, I want you to be vulnerable. And so the whole tension on the neck, on the upper trapezium, on the pectoral muscles, of a dancer carry themselves into the space. I was like, no. You're not a superhero in the class. I don't want you to be that. Because if you are a superhero and you have this shield that doesn't allow to share your emotions, then when I see you perform, I will not feel this identification. You go to see a dancer because of the metakinesis, because of the empathy, the muscular empathy. So if you have someone that is stiff dancing, the people in the audience will feel stiff. So thinking about that, how we respond. It's like when a little kid, a baby is in the stroller and watching a 5-6 years old kid climbing everything, and it's like devouring this muscular activity. That's why I say that we don't need to lose track. We are doing this for someone that is watching. That's why the training of a dancer ultimately is to perform. It's not just to be in class. Even if you perform for the other classroom, you divide the class in half and say, okay, you perform this for your peers, for your friends. It's about giving a gift. It's not the ultimate for me. You dance for your own pleasure, but also because you're serving another. And that's generosity is what we need to share as an educators. The generosity of sharing something that you love.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for being generous enough to share your knowledge with us. And it was delicious, like a most delicious piece of chocolate ever.
Thank you, Maya.
I just loved every second of this. Thank you again. This is Maya again, just wrapping up after that wonderful conversation. Thank you again to Anabella for joining me on the show. I really felt like we could have gone on for hours and hours, but if you're craving more like I am, I definitely would encourage you to check out Anabella's most recent book, Teaching Dance Through Meaningful Gestures, as well as all of the other resources that she shared with us here on the show, that she shares in her book and on her social media and her website. There's really a ton to dive into if you need more. So there's no shortage of information and resources out there if you want to dig deeper into this topic. I also would love to dig in with you through the Casual Dance Teachers Network on Facebook, as well as the Casual Dance Teachers Podcast Instagram page. And while you're with us, don't forget a big thank you to GB Mystical for the theme music on the show. And please show us some love by leaving a review on whatever platform you're listening on. Thank you again, and I'll see you next time.